Welcome back to another edition of Dave Smith Unleashed, and you all love part one of our podcast with the great Brian Oxman, the former attorney for Michael Jackson and the Jackson family, talking about the trial, talking about the acquittal, talking about there was a 93% of Americans thought that Michael was guilty, and then this great attorney here, the former attorney for Michael Jackson and the Jackson family, Brian Oxman, managed to get an acquittal due to hard work and due to all kinds of research, and always believed that Michael was innocent. We always love having him on the show. So here he is for part two of Dave Smith Unleashed. But first, let's thank our great sponsor, MTS Transportation at 800-640-6873. Reliable, on-time delivery, compliance you can count on, round-the-clock support, superior communication, experienced logistics partners. Mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment. So here he is, the former attorney for Michael Jackson and the Jackson family, worked on the Robert Blake case during his troubles as well, the expert legal analyst on the Scott Peterson case, all kinds of great cases over the years. And here he is for part two about Michael Jackson. It's the great Brian Oxman. Brian, thanks for joining us again.
I'm coming straight from my man cave, Dave. I have been locked up. I mean, some people have, their television. They think it's really good. No. This is a cave. It's got a metal door on it that they lock, and it's got a slot. They left me with a week's worth of food, and they went off to Washington, D.C., and I've been left here. And Dave, I can't get out. It's terrible.
Well, the way we left it off last time, Brian, part one of the Brian Oxman interview, we were talking about, Conrad Murray with the lethal dose he administered to Michael that wound up killing him. But the question I had for you is, boy, how did this affect Michael through the years, even after the acquittal? And I'm sure that was a great moment that he was acquitted, but how did it affect him through the years and later in his life? And ended part one by saying it literally killed him. The pressure, the expectations, what people thought about him, what people thought that he did. So maybe you can expound a little further on that.
It really has destroyed him, Dave. It started to spiral down toward the end. You have to understand who we were dealing with here. Michael Jackson was the greatest entertainer, the biggest entertainer in the world, probably the biggest we've ever seen or ever will see. This is a guy who would go to Bucharest and perform in front of a crowd of 200,000 people. And then he would go to Manila. They really don't know how big that crowd was, but they think it was about 1.5 million people. 1.5 million. Okay, Donald Trump. Okay, Barack Obama. You think you're hot stuff. When you get to perform and speak to 1.5 million people who scream and yell and go absolutely out of their minds for 2 hours, then you come to me and tell me you're something. That's who and what Michael Jackson was, and he was then accused of child molestation. It was going to bring his life and his career to an end. All of this magic that he was going to be utterly destroyed. And when he went to Santa Maria, up that 101 freeway with LaToya holding his hand all the way up, it took about 45 minutes from the ranch to get to the courthouse, and she held his hand and prayed with him. His life flashed in front of his eyes. And let me tell you something, Dave, it got him. It did get him. He was like metal. He went through the fire. He was stronger. But even so, it started a downward spiral, and we all saw the end of that. Yes, Conrad Murray was at the end of that road, and the drugs that he gave Michael, it was sad. It was horribly upsetting. However, it's probably one of the most fascinating chapters in our history.
Now, you were with him every day, preparing for the trial, every day during the trial, riding in the limousine to the courthouse in Santa Maria. And by the way, my dad lived in Santa Maria back then, Brian.
Right.
He used to walk his dog. He'd walk his dog every day, right in front of the melee in front of the courthouse. He probably saw you several times.
I was there because I was one of the only attorney who would go and greet the fans up on the fence, and they would give me gifts, and they told me, Brian, Michael's innocent, and I said, this is what we're going to prove. We're going to show that. Oh, please, Brian. I never saw such kind of devotion, such kind of passion for people who Michael never met. These are his fans, the people who adored him. It was unbelievable, Dave.
What was What was he like every day? As we just said, you were with him every day preparing for the trial and getting the documents and putting the homework in. And then during the trial, what was he like? Did he think they were going to convict him? How scared was he? And as you said on my show previously, about 93% of Americans thought he was guilty. And I'm sure you were consoling him. I'm sure you were saying, look, we've got the documents here. They don't add up. These witnesses are lying. You're going to be okay, Michael. But he had to be freaking out looking at spending the rest of his life in jail.
Well, Dave, I did do a very famous line to him, and that was, I said, Michael, you have read Hamlet, and he absolutely had, and he remembered one of the very famous lines in there. I said, look, Michael, we have the evidence that you did not do this. You were never together with these people. There's no opportunity you ever had to ever touch them. This is in black and white. This is not my opinion. This is not your opinion. This is what the documents show. You just weren't with them, period. And I said, if we lose this case, Michael, it's like in Shakespeare. First thing you do is you kill all your lawyers.
Well, tell us about
that. He thought that was a riot. He thought that was crazy.
Tell us about Wayne Robson, who evidently committed perjury, because at first he said, I was never molested by Michael Jackson. You had a one-on-one interview with him, a deposition. I was never molested. He never touched me. And then years later, when these documentaries start coming out on Netflix and there's a chance to make a little bit of cash, all of a sudden he was molested and he changed his story around.
Wade Robson is one of these guys in this recent documentary that they have. Oh, Michael, he did this, David. I mean, very detailed, very, very interesting. How cute, how clever. But when it came to saying, hey, Wade, will you come and testify to Michael? He got up in that courtroom and under penalty of perjury, he said, Michael did not ever touch me. All right, there was no money at stake. There was no documentaries to promote his career. What happened is the prosecution said that Michael had molested Wade Robson. Oh, how interesting. Well, Robson wasn't saying that. I called Wade. He was in Australia when I talked to him. And I said, Wade, they're accusing Michael of having molested you. He says, that's BS. He used the real BS word. And he said, no, it's never happened. I was talking to him, Dave, one-on-one, mano-y-mano. This was not some kind of a public interview or anything. This was one-on-one. And I said, Wade, we need to have you come and testify at the trial. Nah, Brian, this isn't good for my career. He's a dancer. And he would say, no, I'm sorry. He's an entertainer. This is not good for him. I've said my piece, and that's all there is. And I'm not coming. It's a long way, and I don't want to be involved. Well, Dave, I must have talked to him 3 or 4 times. And I said, Wade, would you do a declaration? Dictate to me a declaration. I still have that statement. As a declaration is a statement. I still have that. He never signed that. He dictated it to me, but he never signed it, because I called him and I said, okay, Wade, I'm going to send this to you. I really would like you to come and testify. He says, I've had it with all of this, Brian. This is enough to drive you nuts, and the news coverage is so bad for Michael. I'll be there. Can you get me a ticket? I said, in a heartbeat. When can you leave? I will leave in 3 days. I said, you will have a ticket from, I don't know what city it was. It was somewhere in Australia, to Los Angeles, and then on to Santa Maria. And we'll have a hotel for you. We'll have the whole thing. Well, he didn't stay at the hotel. He stayed at the guest house at the ranch. He got up in that courtroom, and we asked him, Wade, had he ever touched you? Did Michael Jackson ever inappropriately touch you? No. Did he molest you? No. Did he harm you? No. Did he do something improper to you? No. Well, okay. Dave, either he lied to me, mano-y-mano, and as one human being to another, and he lied to that courtroom and committed perjury and is a criminal and should be locked up. Either that, or he told the truth and now comes with his documentary to make money and tell a fantastic story. You tell me which it is. In my belief, Dave, talking to him man to man, Michael never touched him. Never touched him.
And you have the document saying on the days that he claimed Michael molested him, Michael was in Florida and he was in other parts of the world. It couldn't possibly have happened when you lined up the dates. The timelines didn't match.
Those are with the accusers, the Arvizu family in Santa Maria. With Wade Robson, it was different. Wade traveled with Michael. There were all kinds of opportunities that Michael could have touched him. They were together on these concert tours, and no, I do not have the document that says Wade couldn't have been molested. But what I do have is I have the conversation. I mean, come on, Dave. When you talk to somebody heart to heart, and that guy says, "I'm sorry, I can't come. Please, I want you to come to the courtroom and tell them." I didn't do that because he said to me, "Hey, Brian, Michael did this terrible thing to me." I said it because it's an emotional, human contact that I had with this man on the deepest order. They are accusing Michael. It wasn't Michael calling him. We didn't promise anything. There was no monetary, emotional, physical support of some kind. It was a plea. Please come and testify. Help us out. And he said, okay, I'll do it. I didn't do that because he said Michael did bad things to me. I did it because he said Michael never touched me, and he traveled halfway around the world to tell the whole world that.
What about some of the other accusers? When you did the research and you did the paperwork and you got all the documents, was it proven that they were probably lying as well and making stuff up?
The other main accuser in Michael's life was Jordan Chandler. And Jordan Chandler was with Michael alone many, many times. The interesting thing, there's two things that get me about Jordan Chandler. The accusations originally, as they surfaced from the Arvizu family, were identical to the Jordan Chandler accusations. Jordan Chandler was in 1993. The Arvizu were in 2005. They were duplicates of one another. I mean, this was how it came out to a doctor. The doctor had to wring it out of Jordan Chandler. Then the doctor had to wring it out from the Arvizu's children. That the accusations were that then Michael did this and Michael identical. What did they have in common? They had the same attorney. The same attorney for Jordan Chandler was the Arvizu's attorney. And the attorney's MO of fabricating these accusations was identical. Mary Fisher, who was an investigative journalist, did an article in GQ magazine back in 1998 or 1999, and she said that they had administered sodium amytal to Jordan Chandler. And Jordan Chandler, this is the second thing that just gets me, under the influence of sodium amytal, acknowledged that Michael Jackson had molested him. Before he got that drug, no, he denied it. But after he was given sodium amytal, he said, yep, he molested me. What is sodium amytal? Do you have any idea, Dave?
Is that truth serum, I'm guessing?
Oh, am I impressed?
Oh, thank you.
The sports god knows all. when you look at the old World War II movies, they call it scopolamine and sodium amytal. And do you remember the movie True Lies with Jamie Lee Curtis
Yes.
and Arnold Schwarzenegger? The doctor's going to interrogate him, and he has this huge needle, and he sticks it into Schwarzenegger's forearm, which is a big muscle. You remember that?
I do.
And he picks his lock and kills the doctor and the guards and everything. Schwarzenegger was quite a guy. That was sodium amytal. It makes you hallucinate, Dave. And they claim that under the hallucination, it's a barbiturate. You tell the truth. No, not really. When you make a suggestion to somebody under the influence of sodium amytal, they agree and see it. So if I say to you, Dave, you remember back when we were with the angels and you and I went up to the office to see the big brass of the angels. Do you remember how there were all these little girls running around the office? Well, you say, no, Brian, I don't remember that. I give you sodium amytal, and I say, don't you see the little girls running around the office? You would come out. Remember, there were these little girls running around, and you have this. I planted it under the influence of this hallucinogen. You hallucinated it because I planted the image and the memory, and that's what happened with Jordan Chandler.
All right, Brian, Michael Jackson's family, Joe, the dad, Catherine, the mom, all, LaToya and Janet and all the brothers, did they stand by Michael? Did any of them feel he was guilty, or was it, what was the family? Were they unanimous in their support that Michael was going to get acquitted here and standing by him? And was it like that all the way to the end of his life?
Michael's family stood behind him. They were all unanimous in their belief and view that Michael was innocent. However, it's so interesting. Randy Jackson, who took over the defense of Michael Jackson and organized it, and really is the man responsible for having Michael acquitted. When we talk about the man behind the man, that was Randy Jackson, Michael's brother. He was furious at Michael. He was so angry. He said, Brian, the man brought it on himself. My brother, he associates. What is he guilty of? He associates with these people who want to exploit him and want him to give and to hurt him. Randy says he can't deal with these kinds of people anymore. And Randy would tell him that. And I would talk to him about it. And Michael said, you know what, Brian? I am the way I am. I can't change. I won't change. The people like me because I am myself. I'm not some artificial guy. I don't make up things. I don't change my life because somebody says so. He was very insistent on being the way he was, and he understood the accusation that he was associating with, and he shouldn't do that. But he was like his mother. When you say, were they all the same? His mother understood, because when they were small, they would be driving down the street, and his mother would see a woman on the street who was a working woman, and she was going home from work. She made Jermaine, who was driving, stop that car. And she would get out and she would get the woman to come into the back of the great big black limousine, the SUV. And she would take that woman to wherever her house was, because she was so angry that people had to walk and work so hard. And she would say such nice things. And, that's the kind of people they were. So they understood who Michael Jackson was. It came from their mom. All of them were behind him. All of them.
Now, before you took over as the attorney in the Michael Jackson case, didn't he call you and he was complaining about his attorneys and saying, I'm going to get sent up the river here. I'm scared to death. I'm going to be convicted here. And then after you spoke with him, he wanted to bring you on board.
He did. And when he first called me to tell me about how terrified he was and how he didn't know who his attorneys were. He didn't know them. They didn't know him. He didn't even talk to them. He couldn't call them at 2:30 at night and ring them up and have a conversation. He did with me. He did it hundreds of times with me because he knew me. He had met me almost 15 years earlier when I represented Taj, Terrell, and TJ, who were his nephews. They were Tito's boys, and their mother had been killed, and I did the wrongful death case where the boys were the plaintiffs in complaining that Donald Bohanna had killed their mother in a swimming pool incident, and he followed that, and he knew me. And then when I represented Latoya in her divorce, he knew that. We talked about it. When I represented Jermaine in his divorce, and Tito in his divorce, and all of the brothers, I represented them in their divorce, the Lawyers Full Employment Act. We were good friends. And then when he got in trouble and he had these attorneys, he didn't know them. He never talked to them. He called me up and he said, "I'm so afraid. I'm scared." "Oh, Michael, can I help you?" "I will help you." "Yes, Brian." "All right, Dave, 2:30 in the morning and your client calls scared to death. What do you say to them? How tough luck, man. That's the way it goes. Cookie crumbles." No. I said, "Michael, we will take care of you. We will win this." "But Brian, how?" He said, "How are we going to win this?" I said, "We will overturn every stone, Michael. No stone, no witness, no document, nothing will be left unturned. 93% chance that you're going to be convicted. Get 7%. You remember that was Sherlock Holmes, the 7% solution, one of his very famous Arthur Conan Doyle books. I said, this is going to put you into the 7%, Michael. We prove this with the documents. Everywhere you go, Michael, because I know your life. I know how you are. I know what you do. You leave an electronic footprint, which turns into a document. And he says, "Yeah, I guess so." I said, "You make a phone call, Michael. There's an electronic footprint. You go in your limousine and you go shopping. There's an electronic footprint. You go down to the Universal Hilton Hotel. There's thousands of electronic footprints. We know where you are 24 hours a day. And interestingly enough, Michael, we will find out where this family and these accusers were 24 hours a day. And I bet we can prove you're innocent. Not with he said, she said. Because, Michael, if it's he said, she said, pack your bags, pack your toothbrush, you're going to get convicted."
Now, when did you know? I know you're, back when you were an attorney, you were known for your preparation and your research and researching documents, just like you told Michael you were going to do. At what point did you know, when you're going over the documents, oh, that's it, he's innocent? When did the light bulb go on and say, hey, this is ridiculous, he's innocent, we're going to get an acquittal here?
It was the first accusation. It was a couple days, maybe a week or two after I got into it, and the accusation was that Michael met these kids at the Thornbury Hotel on 6th. The Martin Brashear documentary was February 7th, and Michael's handlers, his agents, managers, flew the children, the accusers, to the Thornbury Hotel from Los Angeles to Palm Beach, Florida. And when they went into the hotel, they greeted Michael, and he took them into the back room, according to their accusers. And they all cussing and swearing. They used the F word, the P word, the C word, the B word, the F word repeatedly. And then they got on Gavin's computer, and Michael took it from Gavin and typed in www.thepword.com. And I said, wait a minute. That's the same accusations that were made in the Jordan Chandler case, that Michael would cuss and swear with Jordan Chandler. Michael never cussed and swore in his life. A foul word that for 26 years, I never heard a foul word pass the lips of Michael Jackson. Somebody is telling a lie here, and it's the same lie that was made in the Jordan Chandler case. The MOs are absolutely proper. And Dave, he hated computers. He hated them. Do you know why? You have the vaguest idea why? I knew right then and there. This story is concocted, it's made up. Any idea of his relation with a computer?
I have no idea. Is it because stuff would get out that was untrue about him and slanderous things would get out there?
Close, but not it. Ryan, they're dirty. They have germs.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he would say to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like computers. They're dirty. They have germs. People have taken their dirty hands and they put them out. This was Gavin's computer he was supposed to have taken. And he was supposed to have typed all these nasty things to look at websites and dirty pictures with the children immediately after meeting them, after them coming to the hotel. When I told Michael this, he said, "Brian, I don't touch computers. They're dirty."
Now, were the accusers paid for this next Netflix thing and these documentaries? Were they paid to make appearances here once the stories changed?
The documentary with Wade Robson, they made money. That was a money-making deal. They had their websites on the internet to GoFundMe and make money, solicited money. The ones which are coming up in June, no payment that I know of. They've told me very clear they're not making any payment, and that I will do the interviews for them gratis, just because the truth is the truth is the truth.
The great Brian Oxman, part 2 of the interview about Michael Jackson, the former attorney for Michael Jackson and the Jackson family. Fascinating stuff. You all enjoyed part 1, and so with all the subscribers and the views we got on that one, we said we got to do a part 2 and continue this with Brian Oxman, the former attorney on the case. Conrad Murray, the doctor who administered the lethal dose, and Michael evidently had been taking that stuff, and he would take it to sleep, and he'd have trouble sleeping at night. How much culpability does Dr. Murray have? Were you upset with him, the family upset with him, and did he pretty much do anything that Michael told him to do?
I was very upset at Conrad Murray. I was the one terribly responsible for getting him prosecuted. And as I sit back today, I'm very upset at myself. I'm very upset at the prosecution because he became the fall guy, and he was not 100% responsible. Was Conrad Murray criminally responsible for Michael's death? No, Dave, no. Was he negligent? He was terribly negligent. Did it rise to the level of criminal culpability? Some people say yes. As I look back on it now, no, I do not believe it was. I believe it was Michael's handlers. I believe it was On Shoots Entertainment, AEG. They were the ones who promised Conrad Murray all of this money, that he was going to travel with Michael, that he was going to come into the Garden of Eden, and he was going to be cared for and never have a care in the rest of his life. All he had to do was to get Michael Jackson to the rehearsals. They had to do was all Conrad Murray had to do was give him the drugs, get him to sleep, and get him to the rehearsals. Wait a minute, Dave. When somebody hires a doctor to drug somebody, to drug the patient, that the employer is giving the direction and the control. And in the case of Conrad Murray, they read him the riot act. Michael wasn't going to rehearsals. He couldn't get himself up. He just wouldn't rehearse. Well, that's from day one. When Michael was 8 years old, he wouldn't rehearse, and his father would get after him. And his father would take a strap, a belt, and he would chase him. And Michael would say, he hit me with the belt, he hit me with the belt, except that he told that to Oprah Winfrey. When I talked to him, I said, Michael, he would chase me. He says, yeah, I was too fast for him. I got away. I said, didn't he hit you? No, he couldn't catch me, Brian. I said, what'd you tell Oprah Winfrey he hit you? Well, that was really good publicity. That was good press. Joe Jackson didn't think so. But the truth was, Joe Jackson never could get him. Couldn't touch him. But the truth was, Michael wouldn't rehearse. He wouldn't rehearse when he was a kid. He wouldn't rehearse when he was adult. This was just the way he was. When you watch that movie, which is, this is it, Michael had not rehearsed for it. This was his first day at rehearsal. And his performance was Unbelievable. Fabulous. Amazing.
Part 2 of the interview with Brian Oxman, talking about the great Brian Oxman, the former attorney for Michael Jackson and the Jackson family, talking about the Michael Jackson case and the acquittal. Of course, Dave Smith Unleashed, brought to you by MTS. Call them for all your trucking, freight, and shipping needs at 800-640-6873 for reliable on-time delivery, compliance you can count on, round-the-clock support, superior communication, experienced logistics partners, and mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment. All right, I know you got to go, Brian, but my last question here before we wrap up. What would you say to people out there? Still a lot of people who think Michael was guilty. He had a bunch of high-priced attorneys, and they managed to find a way to get him off. But, of course, and people who still believe that he did it, despite the evidence that you just went over here and despite the documents. So what would you say to people who still think he's guilty?
It's been 20 years, Dave. And you would think that after 20 years, we would be able to figure it out. And frankly, my dear, yes, we have figured it out. The documents speak so loud. There has never been a document, a piece of paper, which contradicted the evidence that showed Michael Jackson had no connection. Children, wasn't with them. Yes, they were with his handlers, but they weren't with Michael, and there was no molestation. The gate logs show that he would spend an hour, he would spend 2 hours with them, and then he would have to leave. But that's it. We had it all documented. Oh, well, it was a bunch of high-priced attorneys. Let me tell you what Michael Jackson thought of the attorneys. Oh, my gosh. He was furious. He said they were bumbling fools. They're a bunch of educated idiots. They didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't talk. He said, if this were some kind of talent show, they would get the hook and they would grab him around the neck and pull him off the stage. That's how bad he thought his attorneys were. He was angry. He thought that the results were that the public was against him. He thought that he would never perform again. He thought that his life was over, and that's what led to this spiral down. But what he didn't realize is the public was absolutely enamored with him. The more he was accused, the more it was obvious that the accusations were fake, and the more people cried for him, loved for him, and felt for him. And frankly, Dave, that's the way I feel today. And, it's just between me and my creator. Do I think that Michael Jackson was innocent? You doggone bet I do.
Fantastic stuff from Brian Oxman. If you want to hear Dave Smith Unleashed and particularly hear this interview, part 1 and part 2, go to youtube.com/@TheDaveSmithUnleashed podcast. youtube.com/@TheDaveSmithUnleashed podcast. And of course, follow me on Twitter @DaveSportsGod. And I'm always promoting the podcast and talking about when the next one's going to be. And so follow me on Twitter @DaveSportsGod. And I'll tell you all about when the next podcast is going to be and what the topics are going to be and all kinds of great stuff planned for you. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for all the views. And Brian, thanks for coming on again. Fantastic stuff as always.
The sports god, you are the best.
There he goes. The great Brian Oxman right here on Dave Smith Unleashed.